you made the kick and bass for this one?
Yeah, that's perfect. The kick, I always start usually with the kick and bass because that's the most important part of a house track. And so if you can get just a kick and a bass to sound good, pretty much anything you put over that is going to sound good. And the bass, the kick is just a pretty standard, just like kind of clicky, tech house kick with a click layer on top of it. And that just helps it fight through the other things that are happening.
Okay.
And so together they make like this super clicky sounding.
Well, what is in this click sound? Is it just like a kick without the low end?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So it's just, this is a sample I really like for like, if I were to undo this, that's that kick. And you hear how clicky that's so clicky and nice. And then you just high pass it, a pretty extreme high pass. And then you get.
Okay, yeah.
And then for the bass, that is all the Korg here through the plasma. And how I do that is I have these other lanes here, and I believe, this was it. And so you'll run, if you're using a synth like this, you'll have the synth running through the guitar plasma pedal, and then that runs into your interface. But to run like MIDI through the synth, you have to use, it's called an external instrument. I have one preset in my racks here, right here, just so I don't have to set it up every time.
Okay.
And so like if I add it to a new MIDI track, it'll just automatically pop up like this. And then that way, all I have to do is add MIDI like this. And then once this actually plays, it'll run that MIDI through the Korg, through the pedal, and then back into Ableton. So that way you can then record whatever you're running MIDI through.
Oh, so you don't even need to press the keys.
No, you don't even need to press the keys, which is good for me because I can't play piano.
Okay.
So that is this. If I go to my trusty synth here, pretty much basically is what this was.
Okay, and what exactly does this plasma pedal do?
So the plasma is distortion, and it's pretty hectic most of the time. Like this is pretty much with the blend all the way down, and it's kind of just acting as a preamp right now.
Okay.
But then if I turn the blend, which is pretty much just like dry wet, like if you had a distortion unit, like a soft, like a VST, where it's just dry wet.
Like Ableton plug-in.
Yeah, like a plugin. Yeah, it's pretty much just a dry wet. And then so the more I blend the signal of the distortion into the original signal, it just starts to get a little
fucked up. You can hear,
Yeah, and then if I were to add like resonance.
Sounds fucked up for house.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're doing dubstep or something, it'll be good. But
like some Nero drum and bass or something. But then if I turn the blend down, I'm just getting a little bit of that like fuzz, and like I really like that, texture. It makes it a little bit more interesting. Like this is even less blended, so this is pretty dry, and it just kind of has like a little bit of like noise to it. And then I'm saturating it again. So I'm using Ableton Saturator to distort it even more. And then the real like juice about this bass is this thing right here, this disperser. It's just like a really unique sounding filter. It kind of sounds like you're taking the sound, you're like pinching it a little bit. It's hard to explain, but this is it without. And then with.
Actually, it sounds just a lot cleaner.
It's like it like adds more high end. It's kind of weird because it like makes it warmer and like adds high end at the same time. And then like some people will go crazy with this. They'll add like multiple dispersers in a row.
Oh, okay.
And now it's a little too pinchy for tech house at least.
I was gonna say if you want to make like straight techno, you can make it pretty pinchy.
Yeah, you can make it crazy pinchy, but I'll just do it like that, and then you can see like the pinch level is down, amount is down pretty much. So it's just adding a little bit of juice, and then other than that, just some EQ, and then
see like a good amount of reverb, nothing.
Well, the reverb is off for the most part.
Oh, okay.
The reverb is really for.
Oh yeah, the dry wet is
just for this middle section right here. during a break, and if I were to solo the bass while the reverb's happening,
it would just kind of help build tension.
Yeah, exactly. And so now in this spot, you don't really want too much low end in the bass because you kind of want to give the listener a break from the low end. And you also want it to be a little bit you want it to be further back and quieter. And reverb kind of does both of those at once. Like if you add reverb to something, it sounds like it's coming from far away, and it kind of automatically makes it, at least Ableton's reverb automatically makes things quieter, just from how it works. And then I will use, there's an EQ somewhere. Oh no, I think it's this filter maybe? No. There's just an EQ that will take the low end out of this section. And it might be on the group here. Yeah, so this EQ is cutting out the lows on both the kick and the bass at the same time.
Oh, so you put this on the whole group?
I put it on the group.
Oh, okay.
And so that way during this section...
And you just automate the turn on.
Exactly. And so this little button right here turns on and off. And so that way, like I said, you just want less low end during this area to give the listener a break. And also when it comes back in here, it just hits that much harder because you're like, I want low end again. By the time it gets to this point, you're like, okay, what the fuck? I want low end.
I want to bang my head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then so, do you bring it out here a little bit just to kind of, is this to build?
These are kind of just like breaks. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of saw this on a Fortet video actually, where if you like the last bar of an 8-bar loop or like the last 2 bars of an 8 or 16 bar loop, if you remove low end or take out the kick, it does a really nice job of resetting the loop. And that way it kind of refreshes in your head. If I didn't have that break there, it would kind of just be 16 bars of just straight, just nonstop low end. Mm-hmm. But since I take it away, like if I were to play it here.
So you're giving the vocal space to breathe.
You're giving the vocal space. It does a lot of things. And so that's why it's really nice. And so it resets the loop. It lets the vocal come up a little bit. And here I do it for 2 bars. When I'm going into a breakdown, sometimes I'll do it for 2 bars just to let like subconsciously, like you're kind of like chilling for an extra bar longer. So it's kind of like naturally, the energy is kind of falling off naturally. And so that way, when there's no bass here, it kind of introduces the idea here. So it's like I'm taking out the bass earlier, so that way it's like, okay, maybe something different is coming up. Sweet, yeah, and last thing for the bass, a lot of the times I'll actually split the bass between sub bass and top bass. But for this one, just because it is an analog synth being played, I don't know why I just could not get it to sound good. And
it'd be like that.
Yeah. And so it just kept sounding way too thin. I don't know if it's because it's analog or if it's just this specific like motif or what the deal was. So it's kind of, depending on who you ask, they'll tell you different things like keep the bass as 1. And when I say that, I just mean like, so what I would usually do is duplicate this. So now I have 2 bass tracks and we'll solo this one. And then we'll just add an EQ to the top one. That's why I just call it top bass because it sits on top of the sub. And then I'll do like a pretty extreme high cut.
Oh.
I'll do it in part. And so now there's no sub in that sound. And so what I would do is solo this one, put an EQ on this one, and then just do the exact opposite. So now this one is only sub. Okay. Which, if you're listening on a phone or earpods, you might not even hear that. But it's just help in like the mix down process, like balancing the 2. But for some reason, like I said, I just couldn't get it to sound right. So even though I usually like to do that, for this one, it just wasn't the move. So it's just all in one.
But when you're taking out the low ends or the high ends, you'll typically use that like sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And people will get worried about like phase issues. Mm-hmm. The thing with phase with me is if I can hear it, it's an issue. But if I can't hear it, it's not an issue. Like I try not to think about it too much. You'll like, ideally you want your kick aligned to the sub to where the phase is not phasing each other out. And with that, there's like pretty simple things to do where you just like have a utility on the kick. You'll reverse the polarity here. So you're reversing the phase of the kick and just A/B test it with and without and just see what sounds better. Um, but a lot of the times, like, I feel like people get way too in the weeds about those types of things. Like, if you can hear it, it's an issue. You shouldn't be worried about things that you can't, that like most people, 95 to 99% of people won't know what phase issues even are. So for that, because people will say not to like low cut too extreme on a bass, but it's not that big of a deal.
Just try not to get stuck on like the nitty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just let yourself produce.
Yeah.
You know, worry about that later. If it's really an issue, hire a mixing engineer and they'll fix it for you. So
someone will know what's wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the last thing in this with like, it's technically like a synth element. I think I was just lazy and didn't move it down there. But there's like this little thing, which is literally just this. I copied and pasted it down here. And then it looks like I went two octaves up. It's kind of confusing because I actually pitched this bass down. So it says 21 semitones, but it's actually 24. It's just the consolidation, but it's 2 octaves up. And then I just like chopped it up a little bit. Yeah, delay, reverb. I'm actually using what I call my, I'll show you the return track I'm using. My glisten reverb here, which is literally just reverb with OTT after it, which usually, like if you were to tell an engineer that you put OTT after reverb, they would probably just cut you out of the studio. But for this, it's nice on a return track because you can blend it back in. So if I were to just solo this return track, it just gives you a super nice, like very long reverb that's just like crazy compressed. And so what happens is you're taking the reverb tail, you're compressing that, which is just making the reverb tail much louder than it usually would be. And it just makes it sound like, the way I think of it, it's like you're in like a marble canyon where like everything, or it's just like this huge thing that you're in and everything is reflecting like crazy. And it just makes it feel really big. So that's where it gets that like really long reverb tail from. So if I were to do none of that, no reverb, nothing. But then once I
turn on
it just gives it a nice space for the track. Because that's the thing about this track is it's very simple. There's not many elements. And so I kind of got to make the elements that are there like really worth their weight. And so with this one, it's happening here, but the listener is kind of occupied with the sound for a few bars afterwards because of that reverb. And that's kind of like filling the space for this area here.
Like in their head, they're still hearing it.
They're still hearing something and something's still happening. It's not like it just, because otherwise I would probably have to add something else here, whether it's like a vocal chop or another synth element or something. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep this really simple and like bare bones. It's kind of like a minimal tech house track, but the bass is like way louder than usual. So the bass is kind of carrying the track, and so everything else is just kind of playing off the bass.
Okay. And then just for a lot, some people might not even know what these like return tracks are. Could you like explain just kind of?
Yeah. So it's pretty much like you'll have like, so let's say with this signal here, you'll have something happening, and you can see these are where the return tracks, like just imagine these are like dry wet. For return tracks. It's not quite the same, but it's like that's how you can imagine it. And so the more I'll send, the higher this number goes, the more of the return track is actually being used. And so what the return track does is it does something in parallel to the sound and then adds it back in. So whatever you're doing, so like in this case, it's reverb, this glisten reverb. In this case, it's saturation. So if I solo this one, it's taking everything that I'm sending to it and then adding it back in. So it kind of just gives sounds a lot more depth. These, like this saturator and this compression reverb or return, are mostly for like mixing, like getting the levels to sound good and bringing certain things out over other things. And then this glisten reverb is mostly for like spatial effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It can be a little hard to wrap your head around for sure, but like you can just imagine it as like just sending the sound somewhere and then doing something with the sound, like adding reverb to it, adding distortion or whatever, and then like overlaying that new sound back on top in parallel. That's kind of what it's doing. And so I'll use those for different things. So
that could kind of be used in any genre too.
Any genre.
Yeah.
No, you want to use return tracks in every genre.
Yeah. It's not a genre thing. It's like mixing.
No. It's all mostly mixing. I use it mostly for mixing. A lot of people will use the reverb because something that you can do, why it's really good for reverb, is once I send the reverb to the Glisten return track, I can then process the reverb by itself. So right now, I'm sidechaining it. This sidechain compressor is sidechaining it back to the original sound. So that way the reverb stays out of the way of the original source. So like a lot of people do this with vocals. So that way you want to put reverb on a vocal, but you don't want the vocal to sound washed. And like I said, if you put reverb on something, it like sets it further back in the mix. And sometimes you don't want that to happen. You want the vocal to sit nice up front, and then you sidechain the reverb return track to the original source. So like you can see when I play it here, if you look at this compressor right here, you see how it's engaging off of this pluck and then ducking the sound. So that way it only happens afterwards. It's not the reverb isn't happening at the same time. It only comes out afterwards, which is usually really good for vocals, but here I'm doing it with synths. And then I'm also sidechaining it to the kick. So I'm sidechaining it to two things at the same time. So that way the first one is getting it out of the way of the original audio, and the second one is getting it out of the way of the kick. And so this is all just to make sure that, because it's OTT on reverb, so it's going to be like crazy amounts of reverb, and you just want to make sure that it gets out of the way of everything important.
You just got to try to make sure that everything else isn't muddy.
Exactly. Exactly. And so if I were to take, you hear how it's pumping?
Mm-hmm.
So that would just get in the way of everything. And maybe in this specific case, it'd be okay. But once you add 2, 3, 4, 5 synths to this chain, then you have all this reverb happening that's just swarming the kick, swarming the vocal, other synths, the bass, and it just muddies everything up, like you said. So we just want to make sure that it gets out of the way of the important stuff. And like if I wanted to sidechain it to another thing just to make sure it gets out of the way, I could do that. I would just duplicate this and then set the source as like the vocals or something, which in this case I didn't need to because they're not really happening at the same time. Mm. But if I wanted to, I could do that. And so that's why I use the return track for this specific reverb setting, just to make sure it gets out of the way of everything.
Yeah.
And this rectifier is distortion, and now we can like EQ the low end out of the distortion, for example. So now when you add the sound back in, like what a return track does, you're not adding any additional low end that you don't want. And so that way it just kind of keeps everything clean. And that's what these are really good for, is just keeping everything clean, because it's all on its own track. And so it would pretty much be like if I wanted to, this is a pretty good way to kind of figure it out here. So if I wanted to, I could set this to resample and then just record the reverb. And so now you can imagine that this is the return track. So it's the same exact thing. And so this is like a visual representation of what this is doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But you don't need this because that would get pretty tedious. Mm-hmm. I actually do this sometimes where I'll record the reverb, put it on a different track. That way I can really shape it to how I want it to be. Like I'm pretty sure I did it in the synth down there. I can show you later. But for most cases, just putting it on a return track and just kind of shaping the reverb from there is a good way to do it for me.
Yeah, this makes sense. It kind of keeps everything a lot more organized.
Yeah, and the nice thing is I want this reverb to be able to affect multiple things to give the whole track some like glue and cohesion, especially for the mixdown stuff, because it's all summed up on the same track, and I'm just sending different elements to the same return, or they're also called auxiliary tracks. And so I'm sending different elements to the same return track, and it's kind of just gluing it all together and then putting it back into the mix. And then
so we're gonna move to like the tops and the perks now.
Yeah, I can show you the different layers. And Yeah, like you said, there's probably a lot more layers here than you originally think. It's not too complicated of like a loop or a groove or anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like I produce trance. I've seen a lot of projects, but this has a lot of tops.
A lot of top percussion.
Yeah.
And what that really does is it gives it like a lot of depth and variation, like subtle kind of things, where if you remove one of these tracks, the average person wouldn't notice. But when you stack up all these things together, it starts to really make a difference. So we can just go through, like I have, what is that, 4 different clap or snare layers, all kind of doing different things. So in this intro part, if I do this, it's just a clap there and the synth playing. I kind of want it to be empty, so that when the drop comes in, it's kind of like, oh shit, now we're rocking. So this break clap labeled is if I zoom out, it's literally only happening right there, and it's just a very washed out clap, almost like a crowd clap vibe for if like big room house or something. You know, those like big crowd claps that happen. But I didn't want anything too big like that or happening every quarter note. So it's kind of just something, because if these aren't playing, you kind of get lost. After a few loops of that, you kind of get lost. And so I just wanted to make sure that people kind of had something to still like sway their shoulders to a little bit during the breakdown. Because I try, for the most part, like a good rule of thumb that I like to follow, I don't want more than 8 bars without something holding rhythm. I think rhythm in this genre is so important. And you'll hear like a section where it's maybe just like a high sustained string and like just some kind of pad element playing that's not really holding rhythm. And that's fine, for, I would say, like 8 bars or like 15 seconds or so, however long, you know, whatever tempo you're at. But once you get past that, I notice in a live setting, people kind of start losing interest. And you'll kind of lose the energy in the room. So just to give people something to kind of sway to, I put that clap in.
That makes sense.
And
they say like every 3, right? Like every kind of 3 chunks.
Like, so this would be 8 bars right here. So ideally you'll have, and when I say rhythm, I don't even mean drums. I mean just anything is something. It'd be like a little pluck that's just going do do do, like kind of how this pluck is kind of doing it, but it's a little too washed out and it kind of loses itself. So I don't really consider that like rhythmic. But like if this were like a vocal chop going da da da, just something on like the 2 and the 4 or on every quarter note, that can just like hold rhythm and give people something to kind of like recalibrate where they are. Because as a listener, like I know myself personally, sometimes I just get lost, especially, you know, in a venue where the sound may not be as ideal as like sitting here and like in front of some really nice monitors, and you may not be able to hear everything that's happening. You can get super lost in like just anything if there's not rhythm happening. And then so this will be the other main clap that's kind of going throughout the track as a layer, just adding high end is just like the most generic clap ever, but it's like perfect just to give something, you know, as a fundamental. And then we
like
have
you
the
said,
snares.
give them something to hear.
Yeah.
Something to make their brain move. Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's a clap playing. Like maybe I should clap or maybe I should move. Like it just like a nice signal. And then these snare layers are like really what give it like that tech house, like that one.
And when you're producing these songs, it sounds like, just hearing you talk, it sounds like you're almost like, when you're producing these, are you kind of thinking the whole time about like how you're gonna like make like the crowd? Are you kind of thinking about playing them live the whole
as
time?
a listener? And I really try to like put myself, because that's where this music really shines. People will listen to it in their car walking around, but those people probably heard it for the first time in a club or at a festival or something. And so you really want to make sure it like resonates in that setting, and then people will take it from that setting to somewhere else. And so that way it's like, I really just want to make sure it translates to where it like does best.
Like you're thinking about how the crowd's moving as you're live mixing.
Exactly. So that, I have 2 snare layers here. That's like the big one. That's like the main one. It almost sounds like a live acoustic snare. It's like really big, like very loud. Very 80s. Yeah. And then so all of them layered. I only have these 3 during the drops and stuff. Again, this one was only for the break.
Okay.
And so it's just nice. And if I were to take away any one of those, like these two layers aren't as important. So like, it's not doing a crazy amount, but still, like it just, all these layers do add up and they sum to make a nice full sample sounding.
Damn, I would have thought that was one sample.
Yeah,
it's 3 in 1.
It's 3 in 1 components. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm high passing all of them, cutting the low end, just to make sure that they stay out of the way of the kick and the bass, which is the most important things. Like especially this one. You just want to make sure that this low end stays nice and clean. And what I've been doing lately is so in any sound, there's a fundamental and then there's harmonics to the sound. The fundamental is where the sound like starts. So in this snare, the fundamental is around 140 hertz. You can see this peak happening. I'll open this up a little bit so you can see. This right here. And so that you would think, and I thought for a long time, you want that like emphasized. Like a lot of the times what I was doing was something like this.
Oh, yeah. Because when you're producing, it sounds almost better for a second.
It sounds way better. No, it's by itself, that sounds way better. Yeah. But you're not listening to it by itself. You're listening to it in context. And so a lot of the times when you're mixing, like when you're in the mixing phase or during the production process, you actually want to, a lot of the times you're making the sound worse to make it sound better in context. And so you're like doing all these EQ cuts to make it sound smaller and thinner and more like in a pocket. But then when you listen in context, it sounds better. And
like if you were to solo these tracks, you'd be like, oh my God, like.
Yeah, it'd be like, what the hell's wrong with the snare? People, the common phrase is like, you chop the balls off of it. Like you're chopping the balls off the snare, but that's only because the balls are in the bass. Yeah, right? Exactly. So the balls are in the bass and the kick. And so you want to make sure those have enough room to really shine. And then these will sit in their own area where the kick and the bass aren't as prominent, but then that's where this other layers come in. So those are the claps and the snares. And then we have the hi-hats here. This one, super simple. I've been loving the like kind of organic sound that's been like taken over like house music in general lately, but specifically tech house, where it's like, instead of sounding like a drum kit, like a drum machine, it's like sounding like an actual kit. So that sounds like someone, if I do this, it sounds like someone just playing the drums. And that's like really nice. It's good. Like I like that sound.
And what are you just playing there? Just the
top drums. Yeah. And so if I were to add the kick and the bass, and you can imagine when I was making the song, that's what I started with, and you're already moving. Bumping. Yeah, and so it makes the rest of the writing process super easy because you can put anything on top of that.
It's almost just creativity after
exactly. That. Yeah. And so you can do whatever you want. And that's what I like to do is I like to get the kick and the bass super solid from the start, even like loud, so that way I kind of have an understanding of what it'll sound like. Like we can talk about mixing and mastering a little bit, but like I'll like clip it early on.
Yeah.
And so like
standard clipper is kind of the best one.
There's a lot of tools. Yeah. And so there's like different, so like K clip is good, gold clip is great. I like standard clip. Just
like
because
industry standard.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys that use different things and they all sound good. I just like that because it's simple and like the visuals, you can see like exactly in the red what's getting clipped off.
Mm-hmm. Do you know if there's a good Ableton one that kind of does the same thing, or is it pretty hard to? I know the clipper in Ableton isn't the greatest.
Yeah, the new saturator with 12.3 or 12, whenever they added it, does have a clip mode where you can do like soft clip, hard clip, things like that. It's not as what's it called, like visual.
Yeah, if you don't want to spend something.
Yeah, if you don't want to spend all the money, you can absolutely do that, and it'll sound good. It'll be good, and then it'll work. And so like I'll clip my drums pretty early on. Like I have this plugin that I use called Orion. I don't know. Have you ever heard of God Particle?
I have actually. Yeah. I've never used it. I've just seen ads on it.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Jason Joshua is like one of the best mixing engineers on earth, and he made these plugins that are very like hardware emulating, where he has his own chains that he uses, and he tried to fit that into a plugin that like hardware chains. You try to fit that into a plugin that would work for mastering or for this drum bus processing. And there's a few different plugins like this. There's like Knock for drums that's really good.
Okay. And this is like a mixing.
This is kind of mixing. I actually have these already set up in my template though. So it's kind of like a chain that like is always on. That way I know what something is gonna sound like mixing into it. You know, different people have different opinions on that. Some people don't want any group processing at all, ever. Some people will put the group processing on after like the production process. I like to have it from the very beginning. I just mix into whatever group processing I will have, and that way I know what it sounds like. And also it helps me because if it rips in the first 15 to 20 minutes of me working on the track, I'm so much more motivated to finish it.
Yeah.
And that's like everything for me is just making sure I'm like really diving into something and like ready to go.
I feel like if it doesn't sound good in the first 30 minutes, you go down a tangent.
Exactly. And you start, and you're like, what doesn't sound good? Like, and you start trying to add things, you know, change things when really nothing sounds good. It's the mix that's wrong. And like, obviously it doesn't sound good. Your kick is 6 dB too quiet. So it's like, I like to have everything like bumping as early as possible. I'll even put God Particle on my master pretty early on, maybe earlier than most people would. And I have other mastering effects that I use, but God Particle is great because you can just toss it on and it'll give you a really good idea for what a mastering chain will do.
Sweet,
yeah, we can get into that later.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can even talk about this more.
Yeah. And so this is it has like the color section, which I usually don't use. I don't use the color, which is like saturation pretty much, or compression for drums. I like to kind of dial in the saturation myself. And then I don't usually like to compress my drums too much, just because they're going to get compressed in mastering. And also I kind of want a decent amount of dynamics in my drums as much as I can, in my top drums specifically. The kick and the bass, you don't want too much. You want it to be like as flat of a signal as you can. So that way it just makes the whole mastering process easier. But for these top drums, I like to get them nice and shiny from the beginning. And you can hear what this does. Hold on. It's honestly not doing much on this one. Doing way more on the kick and the bass.
You can kind of hear,
nice and warm, and it kind of just glues them together. So I've actually, it being that now I realize I kind of rely on that a little bit less than I used to, but it's great to mix into. I love it for that. The other hats, let's see. So we have this 8th note hat, pretty standard. I have another one that is called low hat. That's kind of filling out the lower parts.
And these are just samples you're pulling from Splice or something.
Yeah, I love these odd frequency loops.
I use them
a lot.
Odd frequency.
They're very good. But other than that, I like these ones are either from a different pack or from Splice. And then
you use those for any genre too. They're really good.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
The offbeat close sound effect is nice and simple. And then this second
you can even just from that you can feel the rhythm.
Yeah,
like you're
exactly.
saying, it just adds so much, just a little head movement.
And then this open hat that comes in after 8. So this is the first 8 bars of the drop without this. And then that just adds like a whole other, like if I do it without. Bring the digital. That's without. It just adds a little bit more shine, a little bit open hat. And even within the sample itself, it's kind of closed off and tight for the first three, and then it opens up for the last one if you listen. So these ones I'm cutting off the end of it with the transient envelope section in Ableton in the sample editor. So like if I pull this down even more, it becomes a closed hat. When it's all the way open, it's an open hat. So I just have it somewhere in the middle. I think it was at like 51.
Okay, yeah.
So that way, it kind of, again, it's subtle, but it just adds up. All these little subtle things start to add up. And so that way, it's just kind of like opening it up a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way, in context, it just creates some movement in the hats. And then I have these ones coming into standard.
So there's not much echo in any of these, right?
No.
None?
There's maybe like a room reverb or something.
Okay.
So this is all the way off. Yeah, I don't usually like to add too much like spatial effects to the hi-hats in the drop, but once I go to the breakdown is when I really start to open it up. Maybe where did I have this on? Yeah, so
okay, I see there. Yeah.
This one. So this is where the reverb really starts to pump. So this is the only time I really add any sort of spatial effects to my drums is maybe towards like the end of sections or in breakdowns, just so it doesn't get in the way of everything else. And so that I can show you this here in this breakdown.
You would never know if you weren't listening to the tops themselves.
Yeah. And then everything back to dry. And so that way it just like really has a huge impact because you kind of lose them, in the breakdown. You're like, they just kind of fade into the distance and then they come all, everything comes back.
Like you're almost making the listener yearn for it back. So when they hear it on the drop, it just hits that much harder.
And that's like the kind of the beauty of house music / techno and electronic music a lot of the times overall is the drops are most of the time very similar to each other, right? And so you're kind of giving the listener with very small changes. You're giving the listener the same exact thing they just had a minute ago, but you're presenting it in a new way, in a different kind of unique way. And the fact that you took it away to begin with and then just giving it right back, kind of that's what creates the journey of like an electronic track. And it's all about like creating these moments. Like I think acoustic songs, like a person with like, just a guitar and singing, it's very like message based. Like what message are they portraying through the song? Whereas something like this, I'm literally just saying digital over and over again. And it's like a super loop based repetitive track. So what kind of message can you put in that? Maybe not as like direct of a message.
Yeah.
So it's more about like, what kind of moment can you give somebody, especially in a live setting? Like, so in this way, like while I was making this track, this whole kind of breakdown section right here is a lot of like taking away what you just had and then creating a new moment right before where this like little reverb thing comes in down here like this. And so that's like creating something entirely new, and it's like a new moment before this drop. And then once it drops, that in my head, I'm just visualizing like confetti falling and like the disco ball going, and then like that's like the party. Like that's like, it's a very like euphoric drop, but it's not like melodic, It's like this is like the most feel good song I'll make, and it's not even melodic at all. It's just like the energy of it and like the kind of just the kind of sonics of it. Yeah. And so it's like it like makes you feel good, but it's not like a happy song. It's just that's just the moment that I'm trying to give people. Is like, this is it. Like, just have fun,
Yeah.
And in that way, it's kind of that's the message. And so
it serves the message well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. There you go. And so that's kind of like when I would wash out hi-hats and stuff is for breaks, and then in the second drop you got to have the open rides, the classic. That always, just having like an
classic for any of these
classic
genres,
for anything, like house, trance, techno, just that open 909 ride going from this to that. It just instantly adds energy and like brings it up a little bit.
And so a lot of these tops you could literally add into any genre of pop, rock.
For sure.
Like these could be anything.
For sure. And that's why it's nice, like funk, the super funky. That's why I've been liking like the new like tech house stuff. And then
they are using a lot of the funk, a lot of funk remixes too.
Like that abo sound. I fucking love abo, dude. Yeah. And then the 16 notes has like the shaker.
Both of those pretty standard on everything.
It's pretty standard. Yeah. And so like I try not to go like overthink these type of elements too much, because you're not really no one's going to be listening for like, oh, what 16th note hat did he use on this song? Oh, it's the same as his last song. It's shit then. Like no one's going to think like that. Yeah. And it kind of having familiar sounds like that almost like ties yourself into like the overall like meta of it, where it's like, this is just how house music sounds. So there are certain things that I'll reuse over and over again, like the 909 build snare, like over here. Like that is just so house music that like having it in a song, even though it's in literally like a million other songs, it doesn't matter, because you almost need it. You almost need it. And without it, I don't know if, I don't have it in the first drop. And so it kind of creates, like, it brings you back in, and it just, provides more energy. And then I thought this reverb club is actually doing nothing. So delete that guy. And yeah, so that's the top drums. I usually will have.
And I see you cut this one here just to kind of provide space for the vocal, right? To give it a harder drop.
Yeah. And so like.
Bring the digital.
Yeah. And so that way it just kind of like just gets out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of silence obviously makes everything sound
right
harder on the drop.
And then something else that I wanted to go over with this build snare is like a lot of the time you want things to be slowly moving, like generally, so for like opening up the closer you get to a drop and then closing back up again, at least for me, that's what I like to hear. And so with this, what I'm doing with these transient envelope automations is the closer it gets to 0, kind of the same thing I was doing with the hats, where I was pulling it left, like the more left it went, the smaller the percussion snare, the sound got, and then the more right, the more open it sounded. It's the same exact thing. It's just I'm just automating it over time. So if I were to not automate this, just bring everything up and then play it here, it's just the same. But then once you automate the transient envelope, which is just, you go to clip, transient envelope here, and then you'll see like the empty screen.
This will pop up once you press.
This will pop up, and you have to be warping it, and then you make sure that this arrow is just one arrow going to the right, and then you set, this is like the baseline kind of envelope amount. I set it to 100 just so it can open all the way up, but if I didn't want it to open all the way up, I would just have it like to the left a little bit. And then the closer, like the further down it is, the tighter the snare is, and then it opens up over time. So I'll just play it like there. It's pretty small because you don't want it to be too overcrowded. But then as there's more reverb added to other things, there's more like low end taking out, then the snare can take up more space and build energy. So once I get to here, it starts open up, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I even add reverb.
So this is just a normal snare sample.
Yeah.
It's not a build sample. You made it a build.
I made it a build, yeah. So like if I just type in, I actually just do this because I've done it so many times now that it just pops up automatically. I'll just type in snare 909 all, and then it'll get taken from a different project of mine that I did the same exact thing, but like that. So that's what it sounds like originally. And then if I wanted to recreate this, I would just go like this, do the arrow one way, make sure that's like that. Go to envelope mode, because this is sample, and then envelopes where you can actually make automation changes. Make sure it's on clip, because we want to process the clip. And then transient envelopes is what we want to automate. So I could automate the gain, I could automate the transposition, which is just like the pitch moving up and down, or the transient envelope, which I want in this case. I can make a point here, drag it down, nice and tight, and then like this, and it'll open up over time. Let's just do this.
Like how you would automate anything.
Yeah, and so it's just, you can do that down here, and there's not like 1,000 ways you could do that. You could do it in a sampler. You can do it you could literally go in there and adjust the fades yourself if you wanted to. But obviously that would be crazy tedious if you wanted to do like this. And then now you can just like fade it like that.
Yeah, why? But why?
But why would you do that? Yeah. So there's always multiple correct answers to these things. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like creatively, what do you prefer and what do you like the sound of?
What's Rigo doing exactly?
Exactly. This. And so it's like, I like to adjust the transient envelope with that.